35th Annual Guild of Music Supervisors State of Music in Media Conference.
Okay, so wait, before we even do anything, how many of you even know what temp music is?
Oh, good.
Okay, how many don't have a clue what it is? Okay, okay.
That's pretty good.
We'll just have a little intro and then we'll have an official intro. As soon as they can make the unofficial intro work. Okay.
A film about the Great Sahara Desert, shimmering with heat and mystery. But what kind of a film is it? Is it a love story? Maybe it's a comedy. Actually, it's an epic adventure story about a celebrated British soldier, Lawrence of Arabia. The music score by Maurice Shaw tells us exactly what kind of film it is. In Alfred Hitchcock's macabre masterpiece Psycho, Janet Leigh drives towards the Bates Motel in a horrible death. Without music, she's just a lady in a car looking for somewhere to stop. If Janet could hear Bernard Herrmann's ominous music, she wouldn't go anywhere near that motel.
Okay. Anyway, that was just to give a little introduction before I do an official introduction of how different music can impact a scene and tell a story. And so you saw one scene with 3 different pieces of music, and you saw one with no music. And there's a process to get to that place. Like, how do they figure out what kind of music is going to be there for Lawrence of Arabia? And how do they figure out how to make that scene with Janet Leigh scary? At the beginning, all you have is these images with nothing. So that's what temp music is, which is what we're going to talk about. I'll introduce you to our panelists. It's about, the temp music is when you have no film, you just have a film and there's no music to it. The director has completed shooting the film, and now you have this footage and there's nothing there. So you have to somehow figure out how to get to that place. So you're going to hire Bernard Herrmann, or you're going to hire Maurice Jarre, or you're going to put a song in there. And you sit and you experiment and you play around to figure out what kind of tone the music is going to be. What kind of tone, what kind of storytelling, whether it's going to be score, whether it's going to be song, whether it's going to be a big orchestra, whether it's going to be small, whatever it's going to be. And that, what am I doing?
No.
Told you tech challenge. So the first phase is to actually create this temp score. And the purpose of that in the process is to help figure out what's going to happen on the second phase. Isn't it small enough room even with my broken voice? Well, anyway. So the first phase is to figure out what the mood and the tone is of the music, so you can then proceed with picking out what composer should be hired, picking out if it should be songs, what it's going to be. Then once you have that temp completed, it's then used as a tool between the filmmaker and the composers and the music team to be able to express themselves. If they don't have a music vocabulary, they may just be able to say, I don't like the way, when that door closes, that piece of music there, that makes me scared and I want to laugh. Or that song, that's stupid. That's from 1960, I want a modern song. Or any number of things, because many filmmakers are not gifted in the vocabulary of music, and they're also very uncomfortable with the vocabulary of music, because they've made this movie that they can control every element, and suddenly this new thing is coming against their images that's foreign to them, and they often are uncomfortable speaking and don't know the terminology, so the temp score gives them a place to start and a place to work. So that's what temp is, and now we'll sort of begin. So I'm going to actually read the official bios, because I could go on forever about both my panelists. Andrew, you want to come over here? So I'm Bonnie Greenberg. I'm the moderator today for our panel. To my left here is Andrew Silver. Where's your little bio? You guys have the bios are printed. Well, okay. I printed it out.
Andrew is a music editor
Andrew's
extraordinaire.
a music editor
If you are
extraordinaire.
lucky enough to work with Andrew, do it, because he is one of the best in the business. He's able to straddle a fine line, walk a fine line of honing mood and emotion for scenes and taking in direction from several different committee type situations. I've seen it where he takes all these different things of like taking everybody's like, I want this, I want this, I want this, and Andrew hears it all and goes, all right, here's 5 different selections to this same scene, and they're all just incrementally different, and it's fantastic, and it's not everybody that can do that. So.
And that would be Andrew Silver. You can also read his bio and his thing, and I would also say that I've worked on probably about 20 movies with Andrew, so I will second everything Mary said. And Mary here is a brilliant music supervisor, been a music supervisor for 25 years. She's worked on almost every Quentin Tarantino film. Millions of others that I can't speak of because I don't have the bio in front of me, and I just know her that she's an incredible genius, and every time I see a movie with her name on it, I want to send her an email and say what an incredible job she did across the board. And she recently was involved with
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood right out now, and last 2 years ago she was involved with Marshall, which was nominated for an Oscar for Best Song. And isn't there something else too that you had Grammy or something nomination?
Oh yeah, something.
They will read their bios because the bios I'm about to say is in there, but I'm just saying from a personal thing. 2 hugely brilliant people that you guys are really blessed to have here today speaking. So,
And Bonnie. You should read about Bonnie as well. Because Bonnie,
Yes.
Bonnie's worked on almost every movie that you want to watch
Super
again
talented
and again
person.
and again and again, right? So her movies are the ones you like watch 8 or 10 or whatever times.
so let's
ta-da.
get the intro. So anyway, so now that before we even start, you guys you get now what the whole temp thing is, right? So we call it temp music. It's really called temporary music. There's very few people in the world who can watch a movie with no music and not be bored after about 5 or 6 minutes. Maybe they may make it to 15. Maybe they make it to 20. I believe Belle de Jour is the only film ever that had no music in it, right? And just had a little bell. So the music is necessary. Hopefully, more often than not, it's subliminal, and you're not really aware of it except for when we're doing interesting things with songs. So the music supervisor and music editor have different processes, and they start at different phases in the movie and in the project. And so I'd like to kind of start off with saying how you work, Andrew, and then Mary, how you work, and then we'll go from there with some other, which will segue out of there. But when do you usually come on the movie?
I usually.
By the way, we're talking about, this is basically about feature films. We're not really talking about television.
Right.
Not that it's different, but the focus here is about films.
And the 2 of us are actually working together right now on a TV project, which
Limited
is
series.
limited series for
Right.
FX. But yeah, most of the time we just do features, and so my process is normally I'll watch the film. I might take notes. I then, after I watch it, I make a list of other scores that I think might be helpful in the temping process. And there might be a list of 50 or 100 other scores on this list. And it's just a starting point, a place to, like a jumping off point. It might not actually be that helpful, or it might turn out to be very, very helpful, and it probably will change over time. So then I just start by, I think when you watch a scene, and I think these 2 can also attest to this probably, is it speaks to you, what a writer or director might have in their mind when they're shooting it. It doesn't matter a lot because, it does, it's important, but the film is the film, it's what it ends up being, and it really speaks to you and tells you what it needs musically. And there are different directions you can go in, and that's where your director helps you, because they often have an idea of what they're after with the tone, and then your job is to sort of translate that into music. So normally initially I'll give a lot of choices for a scene, maybe 6 or 8 choices, just to see what might stick, what they like, what they don't like. What they don't like tells me just as much as what they do like, if not more. Although sometimes you get directors who, I don't like anything with strings. I don't like anything with piano. I don't like anything with guitar. And you're like, okay, what's left?
Glockenspiel.
I don't like anything that sounds
Right.
like jazz. I don't like anything that's a violin in it.
Yeah. I mean, some things, you know, you can stay away from, like with comedy music. A lot of directors don't like
Pizzicato string.
pizzicato strings, bassoon, things that are very, on the nose as far as comedy music, and that's good because it makes you work harder to find what tells the story in a more organic manner, so that you're not trying to tell everyone that this is funny. It's not the hand on the back saying, "Hey, isn't this funny?" So it's better that way because then it grows out of the characters, it grows out of the story, and that's what makes it funny. So so it's just like that, I guess.
And how, well, actually, before I ask you other questions, let me say, and Mary, and how about you? How do you approach a temp? And and the difference of when you've had and then I'll deal with the whole budget issue, I'm gonna wait till after each. And the difference between when you've had the luxury of a music editor or not had a music editor, how you have to work in the different climates.
Yes, I work on all kinds of different type movies. Some are very, very indie, and unfortunately, they don't have the luxury of having the budget to afford a music editor. And so the way I look at temps is, like you said, it's a way for the director to articulate more what they want for a scene. And so, and it can be, whether it's instrumentation or whether it's style or whether it's, mood or genre or whatever. That's the way I kind of try to help approach a temp. And I don't have, like Andrew had, I don't have like a ton of scores at my disposal. So what I've said is a lot of times my temps are super ugly. I mean, and they're ugly for a purpose. Because I like them to be kind of patchworky. I don't want anybody in the process, producers, directors, anyone in the process, to get too in love with the way the temp sounds, so that they thwart the creativity of the eventual composer, right? I don't want them to go, well, just do exactly what the temp was, because I loved the temp, but it worked so well for everybody. So I like to make these like ugly, ugly temps that are patchworky and stuff that literally are just there so that we can sit in a room and the director can articulate what it is that they loved about this cue, what this cue does for them in this scene. Because that, I think, is helpful for direction. I think it's helpful for a composer, right? To hear that kind of thing and apply their creativity. And it also helps to to articulate.
Because one of the tricky things that what actually Mary just referenced is this thing called temp lump. And it's very hard.
It's a real
state that
danger.
because it's a real danger, because the director, you put this music in, whatever this temp music is, and if you do it incredibly brilliant and seamlessly like Andrew is so gifted at doing, well, they now live with this for 3, 4, 5 months. They do test screenings with it, and this becomes what's in their head. So now when the real composer comes on board and tries to do anything different, no matter how brilliant the new score is, the director is so attached to this that either they become so enamored with it that they don't want to try anything else, or they become convinced if they try something else, it won't work. Like if they have a test screening and it's going through the roof, well, part of it is because of that music there. And if they change one thing, that's going to impact something. And Andrew and I were on a film together once where the composer, we're at this scoring stage, it's about a 95-piece orchestra. The composer, absolutely brilliant composer, the orchestra played this amazing cue, and we were all in the booth going, like everyone's jaw had dropped. It was such a perfect cue. It fit the scene perfectly. The music on its own, if there was no image, was perfect. It was just beautiful. And the composer walks in the booth, and the director says to him or her, I don't want to give away anything. So what do you think? And she says, what do you mean what do I think? I wrote it. I think it's great. And the director turns to Andrew. This is a true story. And he or she says, Andrew, can you play the temp, please? And makes Andrew play the cue, that was the temp cue, and sends this composer to go back out to the orchestra to rewrite a cue and create a new cue. And I promise you that cue was astonishing what he wrote, but it wouldn't fly for he or she, the director, because that director was so attached to that temp, so much so that she made poor Andrew play it in the booth on that day. So temp love is a very tricky thing that you have to avoid. And
I have a good one.
okay,
The Hateful Eight. There was a final cue, and Quentin Tarantino likes to use scores from other movies. Sometimes it's because he wants to refer audiences to a movie. For instance, The Thing.
so to use a score to make a point, like the Jaws theme or something where it's very recognizable. And
Right.
It's taking
Because he wants you
there.
to think about the shark in Jaws, not,
Okay. Right.
So there's a final scene where they're reading the Lincoln letter, and for the longest time that was a piece of score by Maurice Jarre that we eventually used in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But it's a beautiful piece of music. It's Miss Lily Langtry. It's from the Life and Times of Judge Ray Bean. There's a whole story about why that cue is so great in the actual movie. And so we had Ennio Morricone, Maestro Morricone, to write an original score for the movie. I had to beg the director to allow me to have Morricone write something to take this place of this piece of score that he was enamored with and wanted to keep it there because he loved this piece of music and has always wanted to use it in a movie. But we happened to need a few more minutes from Ennio in order for it to be a full score and everything. And so I had our music editor send the scene to Ennio and with the music attached. And in hopes, because you can't tell Ennio Morricone, can you make it sound like this? And so hopefully, he would watch it and somehow hear the music that was there and be inspired to do something similar.
But different.
But different, but
There's no
similar.
copyright infringement.
Original.
Yeah, original.
He wrote something that was nothing like the Temp cue at all. It was trumpet. It was, but it was absolutely beautiful. Worked so much better for the scene, so much better. But I had the conundrum of like, okay, so how am I going to get the director to hear this and dig it because he was so into it? So I asked the music editor to put the piece of music that Ennio gave us to the scene, do it, fit it beautifully, ramp it up beautifully, let it, sit underneath that dialogue and mix it.
Mix it.
And send not just the audio to the director, but send it with the picture. And he loved it. And it worked out well for Ennio as well, because he had just enough minutes to qualify for Academy.
That's great. Yeah, it's a very tricky process because that attachment, that template is real.
Oh boy, yeah.
And
it's horrible. It's death for a composer.
there's some
Composers just
composers who won't even allow at a spotting. Does everyone know what a spotting session is? So there's some composers spotting sessions do not want to hear the time. They don't even want to talk about it. So what we needed as a guide, so the corrector can say why something's working and not. And there's some composers who won't allow you to use their scores from any of their work in a Temp.
Because they don't want to copy themselves.
They don't want to copy themselves.
They don't want to be
right.
put in that box, but sometimes it happens.
Oh, can we talk about scores that that have been temped with? That you can hear it in the actual scores.
Right. Sometimes people, and I can tell you personally too that when I did this movie, My Best Friend's Wedding, we temped the American president. We used a lot of the American president in that movie.
Mark
Well, I
Schindler.
lived at that movie for 9 months, so now every time I see the American president,
Yeah, me too.
that same thing. Andrew and I were talking about. I see the American president. I immediately see Julia Roberts going through the train station.
Yeah.
Like I see
Yep.
the scenes. I can't even watch American President without seeing My Best Friend's Wedding
Yeah.
because I personally got so used to it. Those of us who were really experienced with temping scores, you could see a movie and go, okay, I'll bet they use this and that.
American Beauty.
Yeah, American Beauty is a
John
very
Bryan, right? The John Bryan Huckabee's score, which is so lovely.
Oh,
and
yeah.
stylistic
You know.
scores.
Right.
And you can hear them when they've been temped with that,
Right.
and then when the director has said,
Give me
let's
something
just do
like
something
that.
like that.
But you're hoping that even if the temp is good and the director loves it, you're hoping, against all hope, that the composer will be brilliant enough to just use it, get as inspiration, and any given cue will use it as get the spirit of the cue, but still make it their own, make it something different and new, and that's tricky. And there are very few. The great ones can do it, but there's very few of them, and it's a real it's a gift to be able to do that.
And it also involves a filmmaker's cooperation too, who
Right.
isn't feeling so tied to them, keep saying, no,
Yes.
copy it like that, copy it like this, who has to be open to this concept, and has to be presented the right way, like what Mary was talking about is, for those of you who are out there, when you have a director who says, send me some songs, or send me some score, don't ever do it if you can avoid it, because it's very different listening to a piece of music and seeing it against an image, and sometimes that takes hours. I mean, I know we've worked on the cue that could take 3 or 4 hours just cutting a piece of music to hit it precisely. And what Mary talks about what she did with Ennio, if she just sent that cue to Quentin, most likely he would have just dismissed it, but she had it worked up, she had it perfect, she had it against the scene, so that he could really appreciate the whole visceral experience of watching this piece of music against the image, because that's what it is. It's not hearing music, it's how the storytelling is being handled. There's another issue with the Temp thing that more has to do with Mary and the music supervisor in here than the editor, who's not, the music editor, not fully apprised, is that we get into budget things, and the music supervisor really knows that. So if we know we only have money for a composer and a small band, we don't want to be temping it with a John Williams 100-piece orchestra, because if a director gets used to a 100-piece orchestra on his score cues, and suddenly he's got a guy on the synthesizer with fake strings, it's never going to sound the same. And I mean, Mary, I'm sure there's probably sometimes that you've come on a movie where an editor or music editor has done something before you get there, whether it's a song or a thing that maybe you want to speak to this concept, because ultimately the music supervisor is watching the budget and really responsible. And even though there's some music editors who are sensitive, like Andrew, to it, it's not really their responsibility. Their responsibility is to put the best music there, and an editor's responsibility is to put the best picture. And editors really don't have a clue, all due respect, and I live to music. Their job is to make the best story, and if they can put the Beatles all through a movie if there's songs, and they don't care if that's what's going to tell the story. It doesn't matter that it'll cost $8 million, or you might not even be able to get it. It's helping present the film to the director and help telling the story. So it's on our shoulders to go, whoa, 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 whoa. No, so that's why we want to get on before anyone starts doing anything, so we can help steer it the proper way. Mary, have you had any experiences?
Oh my God, so many. I actually brought a clip of something. I don't know if we can do it. But yes, when an editor, because why not use the best songs? Why not use Sympathy for the Devil by the Stones if it's the most perfect?
Yeah, why not use the 100-piece orchestra, even though it's going to be a guy who's keyboard?
Right, exactly. Because it makes them look awesome in the room. But then when you come in and go, well, you really can't afford it. I mean, it's the worst. It's the worst feeling to be the no person.
You're raining on their parade, you know. It's like,
And try and replace that. Try and replace Sympathy for the Devil. Try and replace.
Right. There's only one Sympathy for the Devil. Like that's a fun. I mean, that is a unique product, right? So how do you, if someone's been living with Sympathy for the Devil for 6 months, how do you put anything there that's going to make them happy?
Because there's so many aspects to it. It could be the shape of the cue, because it's got this awesome intro stuff. It could be that intro lays under or whatever, and then it's got this storytelling and it's the sound of his voice. Or it could simply be nostalgic because it's the Stones. You have no idea why it appeals to the director.
Right, it could be the
what
song
you're
you
gonna
made
try
out to in 8th grade and has a special meaning to it.
Right, you don't
know.
You don't know. So there was one situation where an editor put in, there was a montage for this movie called P.S. I Love You, and the lead character has an awakening and learns how to make shoes. Okay, sounds stupid out of context. Shoes. But it's great. It's a great moment in the movie. But the editor had put in one of the best, perfectly crafted pop songs, really. I mean, you may disagree, but the New Radicals, You Get What You Get, right? Great. It's got lush sound to it. It's got, I mean, what makes that so good? It's like vague lyrics that are about doing something, right? Happy, but vague enough that you can put it over anything, and it's hooky. But the editor put that in, and they wanted $100,000 for that song, and we didn't have that. We literally had no money for music in that movie. So it was a matter of like having to replace that, and it took a really long time to try and find anything to replace that.
And how long had they been living with it?
They were living with it for, they had gone to 2 different test market screenings and scored high with it. So
and that's the worst. So I mean, I was once on something where I put something that I hated but I needed it just for this, to test it, but it was gonna be an original song, I think it. I think it was like the Pointer Sisters Jump or something. It was a song that was so wrong, and it came from another movie, and there's no way on earth I would ever use this in this movie, but nothing existed to carry this. It's like a 3-minute montage of people doing an obstacle course, and it was an insane sequence that nothing really had enough energy, and it had to become an original song. It was always going to be an original song. But after a multitude of test screenings, where that kept being the favorite scene in the movie, and even though we had the most brilliant song, and we were going in to record it, everyone goes, yeah, no, we have to license that. I was like, what? That was like for Eddie Murphy movie. You can't use a song from that. No, come on, it was the best scene in the movie, we can't change it. It was like, I wanted to kill myself because I put it there, but it was like, they were so afraid that if a new piece of, it was unknown, a new original piece of music, even if it was Stevie Wonder and the Four Tops and the Beatles all together doing a song, it wouldn't matter, because this worked and it was people's favorite scene. And so the fear of changing it became this problem. And it was my fault because I put it there, and I wasn't Neutron Dance? I don't even remember what it was. It was something from like the Eddie Murphy movie that the Pointer Sisters.
Oh, Neutrons, probably Neutron.
Anyway, it's in the movie. It tortures me for the rest of my life. But that's an example of from test screenings. It was the test screenings. People saying that was a favorite scene. So of course it had to have been. God forbid it wasn't the scene. It was the music making it great. If you changed it, suddenly the scene's horrible. So you're coming in a situation. They've had test screenings already.
Yes, test screenings already,
And are people loving the sequence with this montage?
Oh,
the
absolutely, and
It's a hard marching order.
And to be honest, I mean, the song that we got at the end, it filled a couple of different slots, but it by no means did what You Get What You Give did. It was, an original song. We could afford it. The storyline of the movie takes place there's an Irish storyline to the movie, and so we got an Irish performer to do the song. So it filled a couple of slots. It didn't. But the bottom line is the director always felt a little cheated, a little bummed out whenever that scene came up, because you'd had hit this high, and then we had to try and fill it. So that's the one thing. And something you said was, as a music supervisor, when you're sending selections to a director, it's Murphy's Law. It's always going to be the one you think, should I send that one? I'm just going to send it. That's the one they're going to like.
Yeah.
So make sure everything you send is like something you're going to live with, because
Like in her case, it's because someone stepped in and did something before she came on who didn't know any better. My thing, I did it myself. So there's really no excuse for what happened to me. But in Mary's case, that's why we as music supervisors want to get on the beginning, so we can avoid a situation like this. And Andrew, I know you mentioned earlier this thing about temping comedy is very difficult. And this issue of not wanting to just slap on the back, hey, isn't this funny? So I wonder if you maybe have, if you want to share one of your stories about where you kind of went out on, outside the box in creating score.
Sure.
So I know you have things to show for that too.
Yeah. So I worked on this movie. It's called Overboard. It's a remake of the Kurt Russell, Goldie Hawn movie from the 80s. And there were two directors, great guys, but they were very sensitive to comedy music, mainly because one of them had come from network TV sitcoms. And he hated what the networks were having him do, which was putting, very obvious comedy cues into the show. So one of the directors...
Which is a very big TV thing. TV is very...
Look at Seinfeld, the music was horrible, but, sort of became part and parcel of the show. But anyway, so one of the directors I had in doing the temp was no comedy music. So I thought, okay, no comedy music, what does he mean when he says no? Does he mean not obvious comedy music? So I tried some different things. So I guess I'll show you. There's this one scene that has...
Because that's part of what you're trying to translate what that means. Like, what does no comedy music mean?
And the only way sometimes to find out, other than having a discussion, is by just trying some things and seeing what sticks and what doesn't.
But I also want to add something here about the value of the temp, and how through the temp not only can you find out something like this, but you can find out you were wrong about some ideas. And why if you are on a film where there isn't already a relationship between a director and a composer. Because sometimes there already is that relationship, and then they're going to have them on every film no matter what, and they'll figure out how to make it work. Otherwise, you don't really pick your composer until you figure out the kind of music you're going for, so you hire the right person. And many years ago, I did a film that I'm sure none of you ever heard of called Tank Girl, and it was of a...
Oh my God.
Okay. So much for the no one ever heard of it. And it was basically like a punk rock kind of comic book, and we were going to do edgy music in the film. And we thought at the beginning, when we were shooting it, we had this image that we were going to use all these like cool songs, and we were going to create this thing of new songs and all songs that were all this kind of edgy, slightly leaning towards punk. And our score would be really traditional, large orchestral score to counterpoint these songs that were going to help score the movie. And we're talking about it, and I've worked with this director a few times, and I said, Rachel, I'm thinking we should wait. Let's not hire anyone now. Let's wait, go through the temping and see what happens. And then when we started temping the film, and we put, Rancid and L7 against this big orchestra, it was so totally wrong. So totally wrong. And if we had hired like an Elmer Bernstein or Jerry Goldsmith or a real traditional composer, we would have had to have fired them without cause, which meant they would have been paid in full. So instead, as this was going on and we learned the process, we hired a named Graham Revell, who came from a rock band, and even though he could also do traditional score, he was a rock guy. And so it was perfect to transition these songs and create that. But had we hired someone before temping it, we would have gone the completely wrong direction. Yeah. It was way too early.
Yep,
the temp process really helps you figure out what you want to do with the music, what's the right, like Andrew said, how it starts to speak to you. Mm-hmm. But, a director I once worked with said that, making a movie is like having a kid. When your kid's born, you want them to grow up and go to Harvard and become a doctor, but sometimes they drop out of high school. That things take on a life of their own. And you make a movie, you think you have this image, and you think this is what's going to work, and that's what's going to work, and then it evolves, and things happen, and the movie takes on its own life. And as Andrew said, the movie starts to speak to you about what kind of music works for it, but it takes, like he said, 2 months to get to that cue. It wasn't one day. It wasn't, you're seeing it right unfold here, but it was 2 months of work and hard work and tons of choices to get to that.
Right, everything is a process, and you will find that you'll be pressured. The producers or whatever will try to pressure you to make a decision about composer sooner than later, and you can't skip this step because it's really important. Because again, it's as the script is, what is eventually shot is could be entirely different.
Right.
So musically, it's really important to take the time to go through these steps because if you had hired, went ahead with a big orchestral score, it wouldn't have worked out best.
I mean, the temp process really is the most important part in the music and the filmmaking. It really is. It's just one that's mostly not known very well. But as far as the music goes, it really is the most important process. It's where everything gets figured out. Do you have any questions? I'll give you some time for questions.
I've heard of situations where a composer will get hired based on the director falling in love with their piece in the temp. Do you guys see that happen often nowadays?
Sometimes.
Some people, Andrew and I were once on a movie once where the director decided to fire the composer to hire one of the people who had a piece in the temp, and there were 6 different composers, and he or she interviewed all 6 of them to try and pick one of them to come on and do the movie.
wanted to hire 3 of them.
Yes, I'm just trying to shorten the story because we only have 2 minutes. So ultimately, we didn't, but
It was a traumatic experience.
Very traumatic experience, one of the worst experiences of my career. But he or she ultimately licensed those pieces of music and kept them in the score. So there were 7 pieces of music from 7 other movies from 7 other composers that were licensed in that film.
I know who you're talking about.
Any other?
I thought that one of the things that might affect a decision for like this is where it is in the story. That the fact that this is, as you said, about 20 minutes in, it's 8 minutes into the second reel, it might demand, as beautiful as that first piece was, it might have been, the director may have felt that it was too much of a ballad that soon in the story, and that might have been a great third act piece, but
Mhm.
for at that point in the story, it needed a little more energy, but not as much over the top as like Wild and Free, which didn't really match the end of the scene.
Well, good
Yeah.
point, and that's kind
Yeah,
of
That
at
is
the
a
beginning.
fact.
That's a very good
That's
point.
why at
Yeah.
the beginning I asked Mary, where were we in the movie? Because that does help inform what happens with the music. Also, with a musical, it's like you can't suddenly have a musical song pop up 30 minutes into the movie. You need to sort of establish up front, people are gonna sing and dance in this film. Otherwise, people are taking it apart. And it's similar with the montage too. You have to carefully craft what it is so it feels like it's a natural.
Outgrowth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's organic.
Any other questions, comments, anything? Oh. Sliding it under the wire.
So when you have a film and you're temping, and you have to temp songs in, and you're on like a crazy deadline, you obviously can't go and kind of pre-clear everything. Plus, you don't know like where spots that they're putting in a song will then maybe be score and stuff. How do you kind of like, I guess, go about pitching songs? I mean, obviously, no, you're not going to go in and pitch the Rolling Stones and shit like that you know is going to be unclearable. But you know, you don't know prices until, I mean, you have an idea of prices, but you know what I mean? Like, how do you kind of manage that with a director that is like, oh yeah, sure, no, I know everything's not clear yet. No, I know I can't afford that. But do you know what I mean? But try to kind of manage that expectation of a director.
It's one of the biggest mysteries of this job.
Okay.
Really, how to handle that. Really, it's every job is different. Every director is different. Every director's approach to the work is different, right? All right. But you just, I mean, if you do enough clearances, you do kind of know in general what songs are going to cost. If it's a well-known song or a well-known artist, or if it's a record company or a publishing company that is a big company, you know what their
Yeah.
floor and their ceiling is. In the case of the David Gray song, I was very lucky in that Cobalt Music Publishing had just started a record label, so they had both sides of it. And they were able to assist me with my tiny $2 budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it does, based on the budget, it does tell you where you can go shopping. Like you can't go to Prada, you know, if you don't have, you know, right?
Yeah, and sometimes, you're right, and sometimes in advance, if you know that, you can say, look, I'm doing this movie, I'm not at that phase yet, but I'm gonna be doing this, you know, send me a catalog of these kind of things, or would you be interested in doing a package deal? Like, you can sort of try and suss it out a little at the beginning, but like Mary said, it's a challenge, everyone's different, but, right, you know, if you can't go to, if you don't have the money to go to Prada, and you have to go to Target instead, you know, that you sort of have to suss out the situation.
But you can get amazing things from Target.
Totally.
I mean, for real, I mean,
And sometimes you just find great people to write songs for you. You know, you're sitting at a conference here and you run into someone, oh my God, I'm doing this thing tomorrow. Do you want to, you know, like you never know where it will come from. I once saw a guy playing on the promenade and he ended up being the big artist featured in the film I did. You know, a guy was sort of sitting there playing songs and he was just really good and went and had him come to a song.
what? That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Especially guy who went to the band, a guy named Ted Hawkins, who became homeless and was living on the promenade playing music. This would be Karina, and then it really took off, but then he died a few months later. But anyway, that's another story. But the point is, you don't know where your music comes from. It's challenging each time. I mean, it's a really good question. There's not,
Yeah.
unfortunately, an official answer for it. Except you have to go, as you get more experience, you learn what things cost and where they come from, and you make contacts with people from indie labels, and you learn where to find more obscure stuff or more interesting stuff, or people, and especially now with the internet and MySpace and YouTube, you know, you can discover things. People who really want to be in the movie, they almost pay to be in the movie, versus you having to come up with a lot of money. They'll be so happy that if you give them $500, wow, they'll be thrilled, and you help break artists. You know, a lot of artists have been broken through movies and television.
Yeah, these days I'm finding that in order to have something that's unique to the picture, it's really better to have something written for it, or you know, find artists to give
Do
you
you do
things.
that
that
at the temp phase though?
in the temp
Sure.
phase? Oh, well, kind of. If you, yeah.
Well, I can say that my most famous story of things switching, and Andrew and I were on a movie together called My Best Friend's Wedding, and we had this one scene that was always, since the day we started shooting this movie, there was one scene in the movie the director was convinced was going to be a song. Only one. The rest were things singing in the movie, but there was going to only be one thing licensed for this movie. And I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's the scene where Cameron Diaz throws a bouquet, and Julia Roberts catches it, and that's it. That's the only song spot in the movie. 102 songs were written on spec. for that scene, 102 songs while we were in the temping process, right? And at each different screening, we would put a different movie song and a different song in. And finally, the song gets picked, it gets recorded, and there's a music video, and it's going to be the lead single. But meanwhile, our composer keeps wanting to write a piece of music there. So he writes a piece of music there. And at some point during these final stages, as the single's being released, and it's a sister record company, so there's a giant corporate involvement here that's a whole subject of another
And this was
panel.
also in the days when it was, albums were still a big deal and could
Yes.
help sell a movie. So there was a lot of the tail wagging the dog
Yeah.
going on in those days.
Right, because the
Doesn't
video's going to
happen
help
now.
sell the film. This is a different era. This is in the late 80s.
Yeah.
So the director suddenly decides, you know what? I don't want a song there. He's like, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, it's not working. I don't know if anyone saw this movie, but Julia Roberts tries to break up this couple, and the whole movie's her trying to break them up. And now this is the end, and they get married anyway, and she catches a bouquet. And the director's like, you know what? This song's saying I'll be okay, and this and that. And no, I changed my mind. I don't want any lyrics telling anyone what's going to happen here. Sure, the music can give them a feeling, but I don't want anyone telling them anything, so no song. We're scoring it instead. It's like, it became a huge corporate thing. We got called into a giant meeting. The studio wants to spiral off the film. The issues of what happened from that are pretty dramatic. But the point of it was, from a creative point of view, this guy started a movie thinking he was having one song in the movie and no score, and he ended up with 17 songs and 72 minutes of score. And the only spot where he thought there would be a song, at the last minute, after 102 songs had been written on spec, and when recorded, became score. So, in the temp process, songs were being written, and a lot of writers really worked hard, and a lot of great songs were written, and it's not anyone's fault that at the end of the day, none of them went anywhere.
I have a question for you. When you send out briefs do you send out briefs?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you send out briefs, do you put your parameters, your budget parameters?
At this point, I don't know because there's, we're pitching songs for like every spot when it's probably just, half of it's going to be score anyway. So, so at this point, I'm kind of, my thought is that it's a little, for some spots, yes. But at the end of the day, I just don't know, I just don't know. And it's a tricky process right now that I'm in. It's like, pitch songs for this, and then 2 hours later, it's like, oh wait, never mind, that's going to be score. Or give us
Wait, are you
10
coming, you're the publishing, which side are you on?
I miss music.
That's right, you're a music supervisor, I thought. But I
Is it
think
a
part of
film?
why I just told that.
It's a film. Yeah, normally I do TV, and this is kind of the second film I'm doing.
But I think part of why I told that story is unfortunately that you don't have a guarantee. All you can do is take your best shot at it, and maybe even though you think it might become score, it may not. You may get such a fabulous song sent to you, something so great that everyone's so happy with
Right.
that it sticks. It's like how, in our case, it became score.
Right.
Unfortunately, there's only so much within your control, and all you can do is sort of the best you can to get all these creative options that seem to work for you and then for your filmmaker, and kind of funnel through them. And the people who are pitching you know that.
Right.
Some of who are in this room, they know that there's never a guarantee up until it's coming out in the theater.
Right.
Yeah. Man, it's a tough one though.
Yeah,
Um,
very hard.
no,
really,
but generally,
really hard.
It's hard. I mean,
basically stay
especially-
away from, Led Zeppelin,
Yeah. Oh yeah, right.
Stones, and Beatles, and stay away from songs that have more than 3, publishers. I would say at this
Yeah.
level,
And samples,
right?
and stay away
Hey.
from samples. Stay away from samples. And I have a personal thing, which I stay away from things that are in other, have been used before. That's a
What?
personal.
Then you can't have modern music.
Well, no, but it's also like, no, it's okay. We can try a Kanye. Let's just get a price tag on it.
Well, you know what that
I
price
didn't.
tag
I mean,
is.
but I didn't. I was like, no. It was written in, and that was it was written into the script, and the first thing was like, nope.
Well, because
but-
that's the other thing. Remember, the writer
but-
doesn't know anything.
No,
I mean,
but
the
it's
writer
also
is
a
writing
very
in their
big
dream wish.
filmmaker who knows.
Oh. Yeah, let's talk about this afterwards because
Because
there's
I
places
need
you
help.
Yeah, right. We cannot help you after.
I
But
need
the writer is just writing their script. A writer can put
For
in
sure,
$7 million
but this
worth of
was
movie.
like, and it was like, oh, at the first meeting, it's like, no, this is a placeholder, and I was like, great, I did not give it to them. I was like, please don't put it in, don't temp with it. Let's just not even fall in love with it. And
Right.
now they did it anyway. And now it's like 17 writers, and
Oh,
and
God.
of course Kanye has like 1.25%, and there's a relationship there, and I'm like,
Oh,
cool, we can get 1.25 cleared.
So you did the best you could, though. You told them not to do it. You advised them not to do it. I mean, and that's really all you can do. And if they're going to ultimately ignore you, you're kind of, you're stuck. All you can do is tell them, no, we're not going to do this. No, don't do this. No, who was it didn't listen to you and did it anyway?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's unfortunately
That's
the thing you can't control.
That's a job, though.
Yeah.
That's part of the job.
Anything
Why-
else? Oh, last question.
Yeah. How often are you actually involved in picking instrumental songs? So, especially for the temp, when you don't have a composer yet, does this happen regularly, or is it very rare?
Instrumental, you mean to be
The
used
score?
as score?
As
Or-
temp
Yeah.
score, or also maybe instrumental songs?
Well,
that
you know,
say-
Some of the stuff you saw there was not movie score cues. Some of the stuff that I showed was
Django Reinhardt.
like Django Reinhardt, Stephen
that's what
Grappelli.
you
Yeah.
say.
So you can do that. That doesn't mean you're going to go license them, but it whatever helps to get the feeling right.
Oh, wait.
I temp
should
with the
we-
Pegna Cafe Orchestra like a lot. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, when you're doing a temp, the idea is you are just doing a temp, and you try and get music from every source possible that might work, except to stay away from things that budgetarily are going to impact you, like the thing I said about getting attached to a 100-piece orchestra or the Beatles.
Well,
or
but wait a minute.
Yeah.
Of use. You don't want to temp with something that you're going to end up replicating that you can be liable for.
Right.
That's
Legally,
something
yeah.
legally. That's something you really want to be careful about. I actually just worked with a composer, very well-known composer, whose final cue sounded similar to a Mission Impossible cue, like very similar. And we were on the we were on the scoring stage, and I said, hey, this is a new cue you just did. We can't actually do that. And he was like, this is the first time anybody's ever said that to me. And I said, well, have you ever
What's the
been
time
before?
signature? Is it in 7/8? Is that the time signature? Well, I tell you.
You do want to be careful not to be too
Right.
similar to a song or to a piece of score even
Definitely not.
these days, because
And the amount of lawsuits that are
Robin
settled
Thicke and
and there's a
just do
lot
not
of
wanna-
lawsuits settled out of court that with composers who are pressured by a filmmaker to copy temp, and then they copy the temp so well that it's
They get in
plagiarism
trouble.
and it's copyright infringement.
So that is good to know. I mean, it's obvious, we know it, but it's just good to be aware of, because I was really taken aback when that happened just recently.
But you just throw out, did the cue get thrown out?
He changed around quite a lot at the last minute, and everybody was happy.
And it's
But it
lucky
was
you
just
were
a little-
there, that there was someone there who knew enough to speak up and say that.
Yeah.
Oh, you earned your keep right on that.
You're
Yeah.
mad at me, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, right, they're gonna get, that's the thing, people are gonna always get mad at you. You're the music supervisor. Someone's always gonna get mad at you because you're the one who's gonna have to say no, or you're the one who's gonna have to say that's too expensive. You're the one who's gonna say, you have to go with this. So you have to be prepared for that. I mean, you're ultimately being paid for your opinion, really, and for your expertise, and that comes with saying things that people don't wanna hear.
If I could just qualify the whole thing about not temping with a 100-piece orchestra, though, if you're working on a lower budgeted movie and you know that there's not going to be the budget for a 100-piece orchestra, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to stay away from orchestral music when you're temping, because there are ways around it. You can do like a remote session from Bratislava or from Nashville, where
Okay,
it's
this is again a
cheaper.
music editor
It's cheaper.
speaking who it's not responsible for the budget.
Right.
And even though
But there
it's
are
cheaper,
ways.
even
There
though
are
it's
ways.
yeah, but I'm talking about even though it's cheaper to go to Prague or to Utah, whatever, it still costs money. If you only have, let's say, a
Yeah.
total of $20,000 for a composer and his package,
Yeah, then
no country, no city,
Yeah,
no
that's
anywhere
right.
is getting you a big orchestra.
yeah.
So if you temp it with a big orchestra, you're doing incredible disservice to that composer and to the filmmaker. But that's because that's more our responsibility. He can be going, yeah, it's cheaper, because he's a music editor. He's not ultimately responsible for the checkbook or the cost. So he knows enough to know that you could do it non-union, and you can go to Prague or you can go to Utah, but he doesn't really know the details of what those numbers mean and how they add up. And by the way, I do want to throw in one thing. Andrew is also a brilliant musician and a piano player and a composer. And most of the really great
But
music
let's not go to
editors,
Utah.
most of the great music editors are musicians and come from being musicians. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mary. thank you, Andrew, for your brilliant expertise and wisdom and sharing. I hope you guys learned something. This was helpful.